The night of Andrew's proposal began just like any other birthday celebration with friends. I hadn't expected much. My birthday was usually low-key, a dinner maybe, a few laughs, then back to life as usual. But as soon as we arrived at the restaurant, I sensed something was up. It was unusually quiet, with hardly any other diners around. The dim lighting, soft music, and the excited, secretive smiles of my friends gave me an uneasy feeling I couldn't shake. I couldn't put my finger on it, but something was definitely different. As we finished our meal, I suddenly spotted Andrew walking toward me, his face beaming with that same confident smile I'd seen 100 times before. But this time, he was holding a small box, and everything clicked. My heart dropped. Right there, in front of my friends, in the dimly lit restaurant, with the entire staff peeking from a distance, Andrew got down on one knee. I felt the weight of the world press down on me, and every possible emotion came rushing in: shock, guilt, panic, excitement. I knew how much Andrew loved me. He was thoughtful, generous, and had always treated me like a queen. And yes, I enjoyed all the things he provided: the comfort, the stability, the lifestyle. But marriage? That was a step I hadn't wanted, not now. I wasn't ready to settle down at 24, to be tied down when my whole life still felt wide open in front of me. I loved going out, living free, making my own choices, doing things on my terms. The thought of marriage felt so final, so restrictive, as if I'd be trading in all of my independence for a future I wasn't even sure I wanted yet. Andrew, on one knee, held out that ring with such a look of hope and joy, and I could feel the pressure closing in. My friends were practically bouncing in their seats, eyes bright with expectation, silently urging me to say yes. I looked at him, then at them, realizing there was no way out of this without breaking his heart. After all he'd done for me, after the wonderful life he'd given me, saying no wasn't an option. The guilt weighed heavily on me. But I knew deep down, this wasn't the right decision for me. So, I plastered on a smile, swallowed my doubts, and gave him the answer he was waiting for. Yes, I whispered, and the entire restaurant erupted in applause. Andrew pulled me into a tight embrace, his joy overflowing. The moment felt surreal, like I was watching myself from the outside, playing a role I hadn't chosen. My friends crowded around us, their faces lit with excitement. I did my best to smile and laugh, pretending to be as happy as everyone else. Yet as the night wore on, that hollow feeling stayed with me. The weight of that ring on my finger seemed heavier than it should. Every time I glanced at it, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd just set my own trap. The weeks following the proposal were a blur of wedding plans, questions, and expectations. Andrew was eager, thrilled even, to dive into all the details, but the more involved he got, the more I felt my independence slipping away. My friends and family were buzzing with excitement over the engagement, constantly talking about the big day as if it was some dream come true. And Andrew? He was all in. Every spare minute, every spare dollar went into planning this wedding, the perfect event to kick off what he saw as our perfect life together. For me, though, things were different. I loved the life we shared, the dinners at upscale restaurants, weekend getaways, the shopping sprees where I didn't have to glance at a single price tag. Andrew took care of everything, and being with him brought a kind of effortless luxury I'd never had before. I'll admit, I'd grown used to it. I liked the feeling of security, the sense that I could ask for anything, and it would just appear. But marriage? That was a whole different commitment. I wanted the perks, sure, but I didn't want the strings that came with them. As the wedding preparations got underway, Andrew spared no expense. He hired an event planner to handle every detail, from the venue to the floral arrangements, and even sent me swatches of fabric for my approval. My friends thought I was the luckiest woman alive, that I'd found this prince of a man who was giving me the wedding every girl dreamed of. But each time someone squealed over dress fittings or cake tastings, I felt more and more trapped. Inside, I knew I wasn't ready. There was a part of me that wanted to call the whole thing off or at least push it back. I tried dropping hints to Andrew, suggesting we could take things slower, but he brushed them off. He thought I was just being modest or nervous. To him, This wedding was a dream come true, a chance to show the world how much we loved each other. But to me, it felt like I was signing my freedom away. As each day brought us closer to the wedding, I found myself avoiding any real involvement. I skipped dress fittings, claimed I was too busy to meet with the event planner, and brushed off my friends' enthusiasm with half-hearted smiles. Andrew took care of it all, thinking he was easing my stress, when in reality, he was just paving the way to a future I wasn't even sure I wanted. I kept telling myself I'd figure it out eventually, that maybe the wedding didn't have to mean the end of my independence. But every time I tried to talk to Andrew, his excitement drowned out my concerns. I was stuck, a guest at my own wedding. I smiled through it, trying to downplay the whole thing, but inside, all I wanted was for the day to be postponed, for some miracle to give me just a little more time to figure out what I actually wanted. The night of the party felt like any other celebration with Andrew's friends, who'd grown to accept me as part of their close-knit circle. Andrew loved to host, and this time he threw a small get-together to celebrate our engagement, marking 1 year and 2 months of being together, as he proudly announced to everyone. The place was alive with laughter, music, and drinks flowing freely, and, naturally, Andrew's friends came over to congratulate me, all smiles and genuine goodwill. At first, I stood by Andrew's side, smiling and nodding as everyone congratulated us, but after a while, I drifted toward the lounge area to mingle and get away from the wedding talk. As soon as I reached for my third glass of wine, his friends joined me, playfully asking about the wedding plans. I wasn't in the mood for it, but I figured they'd expect me to say something, so I went along. Fueled by the alcohol and perhaps a bit of frustration, I started venting about the endless preparations and how ridiculous it all felt. One of his friends asked, "So, are you excited? Ready to be Mrs. Andrew?" They said it with such genuine happiness, and I almost felt guilty. But I was tipsy, tired, and frankly, annoyed. I remember laughing a bit too loudly and shrugging, saying, "Yeah, if it even happens." I didn't exactly plan on marrying him, you know? The shocked expressions on their faces would have made anyone sober up instantly, but I didn't stop. I mean, don't get me wrong, Andrew's great. He's generous, treats me well, and, well, he pays for everything. I chuckled, swirling my wine glass. Who wouldn't like a guy like that? Their laughter was more nervous now, not knowing if I was joking or not. Then, I let it all spill out. I told them about how I wasn't even sure I was in love, how the proposal had come out of nowhere and cornered me into saying yes. I admitted that marriage wasn't what I wanted, not at 24, not when I still had so much life to live. I didn't want to be tied down, to sacrifice my freedom, especially when I was finally enjoying the good life he provided. I laughed it off as if it were no big deal, saying, honestly, I'm just here for the perks, the vacations, the shopping, the lifestyle. Who wouldn't? Their expressions said it all. What had started as casual banter had quickly spiraled into a confession none of them expected. I'd crossed the line, but by then, I'd already let it all out. One of Andrew's closest friends finally spoke up, asking me, "So, if you're not serious about marrying him, why are you even with him?" I shrugged, my tipsy confidence barely wavering, because he gives me what I want. And if we do get married, well, there's always divorce, right? I laughed, thinking I was being clever, but the look in their eyes wasn't amusement, it was something darker, disappointed even. They just stared, like they couldn't believe the words coming out of my mouth. After an awkward silence, they suggested we go back and join the rest at the pool. Everyone got up, leaving me alone in the lounge. I tried to brush it off, telling myself they wouldn't take me seriously. But part of me knew I'd said too much. The wedding day came faster than I'd anticipated, a whirlwind of activity that left me with barely a moment to breathe. From the moment I woke up, I was swept into a flurry of preparations, hair, makeup, a fitted gown that clung to me like a cage. Friends and family surrounded me, buzzing with excitement and snapping pictures, filling the room with laughter and congratulations. But deep inside, I felt hollow. The closer I got to the ceremony, the heavier the pit in my stomach grew. There were too many eyes on me, too many expectations, and I was too tangled in my own confusion to enjoy any of it. As we arrived at the venue, everything was perfect, just like Andrew had planned. Rows of white chairs, elegant flower arrangements, a soft melody playing in the background. It was the picture-perfect wedding, straight out of a magazine, exactly what he'd envisioned. My friends helped me adjust my veil as I prepared to walk down the aisle, and though I forced a smile for the cameras, I couldn't shake a gnawing sense of unease. It was almost like I was walking into something I couldn't see, a feeling I tried to dismiss as pre-wedding jitters. When I finally made my way down the aisle, I looked around, but there was no sign of Andrew. I assumed he was just running late, maybe dealing with some last-minute details. But as I reached the altar, the murmurs grew louder, and people exchanged confused looks. Then, as if on cue, the lights dimmed, and a large screen behind the altar flickered to life. My heart sank, unsure of what was happening, but nothing could have prepared me for what I was about to see. The video started with a clip of that party night at Andrew's place. There I was on screen, laughing with his friends, holding a glass of wine, speaking every single word I'd foolishly uttered. My heart stopped as I realized he had recorded everything. I watched, horrified, as my tipsy, careless words played back for everyone to hear. I could barely breathe as I heard myself confess to not wanting to marry Andrew, admitting I was only with him for his money and the lifestyle he provided, even joking about divorce before the wedding vows had been made. The crowd fell silent, each face staring at me in shock, horror, or outright disgust. Whispers started to ripple through the crowd, judgmental eyes fixed on me from all directions. I could barely comprehend what was happening, feeling my chest tighten with a mixture of terror and humiliation. Every face I saw was someone I knew, people I'd smiled at minutes before, now watching my shallow confession play out on the screen. The video cut to black, but before I could catch my breath, Andrew's face appeared. His expression was cold, hardened in a way I'd never seen. With a voice as sharp as a blade, he addressed me and the guests. I couldn't let this wedding happen without everyone knowing the truth. I loved you, Sarah. I thought we were building a life together. But now, I can't stand the sight of you. He went on, exposing every lie, every selfish motivation I'd confessed. He told the guests that he refused to marry someone who saw him as nothing more than a bank account, who had planned an escape route from the beginning. The words were brutal, each one cutting through me like a knife. I stood there frozen, unable to look away, unable to do anything but watch as he dismantled everything. When the video ended, there was nothing but stunned silence. I wanted to run, to disappear, but my legs wouldn't move. I felt the weight of everyone's eyes on me, judging me, seeing me for who I truly was. The whispers grew louder, and soon guests began shaking their heads, some leaving their seats and filing out. I felt a sharp pang of shame and disbelief, like I'd been ripped open for everyone to see. I tried to find Andrew, to speak to him, to somehow fix this, but he was gone. My family, his family, all the people I knew stood there, watching me in stunned silence or leaving with looks of disgust. I had been completely exposed, betrayed, and abandoned in the most public way possible. As the last guests left, I was left alone, humiliated beyond anything I'd ever felt. The wedding I hadn't wanted had turned into a nightmare, and I was left standing in the ruins of my own choices. In the aftermath of the wedding, my life felt like it had come to a crashing halt. Everywhere I went, it was as if people were whispering about me, pointing and shaking their heads. Word spread fast about what had happened. It wasn't just my close circle who knew, but the entire town seemed aware of my humiliation. Even strangers gave me those knowing looks, some smirking, others staring with open judgment. I tried to ignore it, to pretend I didn't care, but I couldn't escape it. The reality of what had happened followed me everywhere, and I felt trapped in the scandal that had become my life. My family was devastated. My mom couldn't even look at me without her face falling, disappointment written all over her expression. She'd spent months excitedly planning for the wedding, bragging to her friends, and now she could barely speak to me. My dad's usual calm presence was clouded by his own frustration and hurt, and he made it clear he didn't approve of the choices I had made. They both told me how ashamed they felt, how hard it was to face people in the community after everything had been exposed. I could feel their disappointment like a weight on my chest, reminding me every day of the life I'd ruined, not just for myself, but for them too. Things got even harder when I started looking for work. I needed something to pull myself together, some way to move forward, but each interview felt like walking into a trap. At first, I'd get a polite smile and some standard questions, but by the end, they'd shift in their seats, lean in a little, and ask something subtle but loaded, hinting that they knew exactly who I was. The rejections piled up, and each time, they told me that someone like me wasn't a good fit for their company. The word stung, and I'd leave, my head down, feeling the sting of judgment. The worst part was how the scandal had seeped into every corner of my life. Friends stopped answering my calls. People I'd known for years cut me off, wanting nothing to do with me now. The story had spread too far, and I had nowhere to hide. Even going to the grocery store felt like a nightmare. I'd see someone from my past life and feel their eyes linger just a second too long, hear the hushed voices as I walked by. I could practically feel their disdain, their satisfaction in seeing me brought low. Inside, I was falling apart. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat without feeling sick. My mind was haunted by that wedding day, replaying it over and over, the horror and humiliation refusing to let go. I'd spend hours just staring at the ceiling, feeling like a shadow of who I used to be. I couldn't shake the guilt, the regret. I'd lost everything, my friends, my family's trust, and the life I thought I'd have. It was as if I'd become a ghost in my own skin, and every day felt like a struggle just to keep going. I finally signed up for therapy, desperate for some way to make sense of what had happened. The therapist listened as I tried to explain it all, the choices I'd made, the reasons behind them, the weight of my regrets. But even therapy was a slow climb, and the shame and anger wouldn't let go of me easily. I was exhausted, worn down, haunted by my own choices. Every day is a reminder of the life I threw away. Rebuilding feels impossible. It's been months, but I still feel as raw as I did on that day, my wounds open and bleeding. Each time I step outside, it's a reminder that my mistakes are out there for everyone to see. The looks, the whispers, the disappointment in my family's eyes, they're all scars I can't escape, reminders of the future I lost and the life I shattered all by myself.